everybody, it's Lydia here, and today we are in my kitchen because my bouquet flowers have been drying for over a week, and so we are going to try and do resin today. This is first time ever doing resin, so it's going to be an experiment. It might be interesting, it might fail. How do I feel about that with the fact that these are my wedding flowers? A little risky, but it's okay. So anyways, in the most comfiest of clothes ever, just an oversized t-shirt and some pajama pants because it is pouring. It's been raining for 3 or 4 days now, and a little sunshine that will peek through here and there, but not a whole lot overall. So I figured what a better time than the present, to work on some resin. So with all that said, I'm going to first start off by laying all of my supplies out and reading through all the instructions, and then let's get started. Hi everybody, it's great to be back. So I've got some, I guess it's a story time, and this video has been long due to be done. There's been numerous reasons why I've just kind of been pushing it off, but this is, as the title gives, the resin video. So I started this process, I think sometime in July, because that's when I ordered a lot of the supplies. It was either in June or July, and the whole process, the whole idea was to take the flowers from my wedding bouquet and to encase them in resin so that I could have them for the rest of my life without spending hundreds of dollars paying someone to do it, like through Etsy or something. And it's extremely expensive to pay for someone to do that, and it's a very tedious process, you know, sending them to them, having them packaged properly, or having them already dried. Like, it's just a very long process. And me thinking through, oh, I'm artsy, I can do it, I'll figure it out, it'll be fine. And if it doesn't work out, I'm not that worried about it. I've got photos of my flowers. Well, long story short, I'm really glad I have photos of my flowers. So it did not work, and we'll kind of go through my process. You guys will see in the videos behind me of kind of like what I did, the issues that I found in it, and kind of like my conclusion thought process. So by the time that I had my flowers, they were still like in water because it was still soon enough. So I guess it had to have been like end of June because I got married at the beginning of June. And the first process was to dry them. So there's these particular salts that you can do, and I will like list everything that I bought and put them list with Amazon. And the drying salts worked perfectly. Like, you just put them in the box with the flowers, make sure that the flowers are completely covered and have salt, if possible, like in the flower. That way it dries it properly, and that kind of helps it maintain its color. So if you typically just dry like a flower normally, it's also going to age, and so the color is going to shift and change. It might get darker, it might lose like its vivacity, its vividity, like it's not as vivid. And so using the drying salts, speeds up the process, but it also just kind of ensures that the colors are going to be a little bit more true to what they normally are, like when they're fresh. So did that process. I cannot remember exactly how long I had to wait, but it was a while. Like, I think I probably waited a week or more just to make sure that they were really dry, because one thing that you didn't want to do was encase fresh live flowers in resin, because then they'll rot in the resin and it can just mess up the resin. It can also look gross. So definitely didn't want that to happen. So I just put them in the drying salts in like a Tupperware container and left them for a very long time. Then we get to the process of actually like using resin. Now, here's part of the issues that were some of, my own fault. So with resin, you need two different things. You need epoxy resin, and then you need part B, appropriately labeled, and this is the hardener. Okay, so if you just do this, it's never gonna get hard. It's just gonna be tacky. It's just gonna be very sticky and won't work. So you have to do the hardener to kind of actually help it get that glass feel, right? And so they tell you that you typically want to do kind of like a 1-to-1 ratio of A and B. Now, I also needed molds. So I ordered some molds. Some of the things I ordered came as sets, but part of the mistake that I made was my husband, Payne, had some resin because he wanted to do some random experiment. And so I used some of the resin he had and inevitably had to buy more. Had to buy a good amount, which was kind of shocking. But the set that I ordered came with quite a few things. So it came with like these nozzles to put onto the case, which is nice, kind of helps with the flow, helps the bottle itself not to get super messy. I don't think I did that. Then you have gloves, and it came with like little stirrers, a few other things. It also came with like these little syringe type deals, and these help to like suck out the bubbles, because when you have a little mixing jar, which a lot of this one came with a silicone mixing, which was really nice, super easy to clean, because any resin that dried in the bottom, I could then just like flip this thing out and it cleaned it. That was nice. Some of them would come with like little mixing jars like this, like little medicine things. These, not as fun to clean, but they worked, just not as fun. Now, when you mix resin parts A and B, so like the resin and then the hardener, you're going to be stirring it, and you're going to get all of these tiny little bubbles in it. And as those bubbles kind of move their way to the surface, they tend to get larger. So there's different ways to kind of get them out. One of the ways is to suction them out. Another way is to like use heat. So a lot of people use heat guns, blow torches, but you need something hot enough. I did not have a heat gun or a blowtorch, so I used what I did have, which were lighters. It somewhat worked, but it didn't work perfectly. So some of the pieces that you'll see, that was a struggle. Now, this set that I got also came with different molds. So I have like a square silicone mold. I have a pyramid. So I guess this is cube. I realized I gave the 2D and then the 3D. I'm a math brain. It's what it is. Cube, and then a pyramid shape. And then they also gave a spherical shape, which comes apart like two. So you pop the pieces together. It has a hole at the top. You fill in from the top once you've put whatever you want on the inside and close it. And you can get a sphere. Then I also had a heart mold and a hexagon. Okay, great molds, super cool, nifty. So I started working on some of them, and I wanted to start with the smaller. Now, a few of the things that I struggled with: placement, really hard to keep whatever item, for me it was flowers, really hard to keep the item where I wanted it to be, because once you poured in the resin, it would move. But then I also found that the resin would expand sometimes, which was really frustrating, because numerous times, and you'll see in a second in the sphere, I'd fill this up to like, oh, perfect. And then it would start overflowing over the top. And I was like, oh no, this is going to get crazy. It's going to be it's a huge mess. It's going to be hard to get out. that was interesting to find out, that resin expands. Not exactly sure why. That'd be an interesting research. So I struggled a lot with placement, and I saw for a lot of things, like especially with flowers, you want to make sure that you get resin into all of the crevices between the petals, because otherwise that's just air trapped, and then the air will eventually move out and you have larger bubbles. And so it was a huge mess. So we've talked about the supplies I was dealing with. We talked about a few initial struggles I had. So now let's just kind of look and see what I was dealing with and what I've ended with. So the first things I started with, I did the pyramid and the cube. The cube turned out horrible. It was so bubbly, and it was the old epoxy and resin that my husband had, and it just, you could barely tell it had a flower in it. So I threw that thing away. Now this is what my triangle, so fancy, turned out to be. It's not horrible. It definitely has like minuscule bubbles, but even more so, the bottom, the stem is poking out. Now, the stem is poking out because I couldn't keep the flower where I needed it to be. It kept rising because of all of the resin pushing it out. And so I had to have the stem out. The stem was actually longer so that I could like hold it there. And I eventually trimmed that off. This thing technically is okay. It's pretty solid. It's still got some tacky-ish. Sorry, that beep means my dryer's done. The sides need to be sanded, but it's not horrible. Not my favorite, not horrible. It's just kind of a test experiment. This is my sphere, and this is so sad. So my sphere turned out really sad. A lot of bubbles, an insane amount of bubbles. That is where the hole was. That's where I was telling you like that the epoxy was just overflowing and it would fall out from the top. Other thing, the opposite side where there is no hole, it got like these bubbles, and so now it has these dents and it's tacky, like sticky, and so now I have a giant air bubble dent in my sphere. I can manipulate it. My fingerprint gets stuck in it. So this is another thing that I'm not going to keep. I'm going to throw it away. It was a failed attempt. It's sad, but it's what it is. The next two that I tried was the heart and my dryer is just wants to make sure that I know it's done. Anyways, so after the sphere, the pyramid, and the cube, I tried the heart and the hexagon, and these actually held like the roses. Okay, so the other two just held like actually smaller purple flowers that were part of my bouquet, which I'll add a photo of my bouquet. But this is what the heart turned out. It's got so many issues. It's not even funny. So it was in the mold like this. So this was the top. So the rose kept rising out. So the rose is out. And the problem with that is there's not resin fully covering the rose. So this would have to be sanded, but then there would still be like that texture. It's not going to be a glass finish. It's going to have parts of the rose sticking out, same here on the bottom, and that was frustrating. On the back, it's even worse. On the back, I've got all of this weird texture from where it got stuck in the mold, and like parts of the backing where parts of it are smooth and okay looking, other parts are it's super textured because it got stuck to it, and that was very maddening. So this was another just sad example of something that could have turned out really cool and just did not work. So, and all of this is on cardboard because it's so tacky, like it's just keeps sticking to things, which by the way, They have gloves, right? I showed you in my kit. It came with gloves. I don't know how people use gloves with it because you would get stuck, or I would assume leave glove remnants. But use gloves because washing resin off of your skin is the worst thing ever to have to deal with. So annoying. Okay. Here is my big piece. Okay, so again, I really liked my layout. I like how I set it up with the white rose. I've got the greenery kind of framing it around. I've got my purple roses down in the bottom. I think it could be so beautiful. But a few things to notice. There's a very clear line down the sides from where I had put resin, had to let it sit a little bit so that the flowers would stay where they are, and then I had to pour more. And I don't exactly know what the proper time frame is because I obviously didn't get it right, so it looks like there's just a glass panel down the middle, which is not fun. And then just like with the heart, the back is doing that weird texture thing where the mold got stuck to my resin. And the other thing is this one is still tacky. Like, my hands are, especially here on the front, my hand is getting stuck to it. And, like, I can move it around. It's very frustrating. So, all in all, a lot of things went wrong with my resin experience. I'm not exactly sure exactly what went wrong. I'm assuming that my ratio between my resin and my hardener, or my parts A and my part B, weren't always spot on. And so because I had to constantly mix more and more because all of this just took so much resin, I think there were spots, mainly towards the end, where my ratio just wasn't it, which is interesting because, like, there's pretty much the same amount left, so you'd think I did it right, but I guess at certain pours I didn't. So, if anyone has any suggestions on how to salvage some of these, I'm pretty sure that, like, the heart, I'm pretty sure that one's going to be scratched. I know my sphere is going to be scratched. I think my pyramid could possibly be salvaged, but, like, this one especially, if anyone knows of a way to salvage this, any suggestions for the back that would look good still, I am all ears. I'm not too worried if it doesn't work out, if I have to scrap all of it. I still dried some of the flowers and didn't put them in any kind of resin, so I still have some of my flowers and I have the photos. But I will say that I think this was my last time doing resin, at least with this kind of intent. I follow an artist that does, like, little sculptures, clay sculptures, and she covers them in resin and then she hardens them using, like, a UV light, and that looks really cute, and I've always thought about trying them out. I'll tag her down. She's called Uncomfy, and I love her videos. But I think trying to do any kind of this where I have to mix the hardener and the original part A together, I don't think I'm ever going to do that again. It was so much work. It took so much time. It was such a hassle and so frustrating, and it didn't turn out the way I wanted it. So I think it's a beautiful art, and there are so many artists that do it so well, and I have such a better appreciation for their work because I know the struggle that goes into it. But it's something that, in order for me to get to that level, it would just take so much more time and so much more money because resin is not cheap, and I'm just not in a position right now where that's something where I want to devote my time to. So it was a fun experiment. Huge appreciation for resin artists out there. Go y'all. But I think I want to stick to my watercolors and my pastels. I think I really enjoy those. And even ceramics. That was 10 times easier than dealing with resin. Yeah. If y'all have ever done resin, please, 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 first off, like this video, comment with me any advice and suggestions so that I have them in mind. Even if someone asks me, I can be like, well, here's what went wrong with me, but you know, here's what could possibly work. And please, 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 please go follow me on Instagram. I'll tag that below as well. I have so many things I need to tag in this. But follow me on Instagram. Send me a DM. I would love to see your work. And if you're comfortable with it, I would love to share your work on my account and just kind of help build that community and appreciation for an incredible skill in art. With all that being said, I wish you all the best day ever. And if you try resin, let me know how it goes and if you can figure out why what I did went so wrong. Have a great day, everyone, and I'll see you guys in the next video.